Reflection. Listen, there comes a time in life when you just get tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of proving. Tired of explaining yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. Reflection. That's the moment you begin to wake up. That's the moment you begin to live. Because the day you stop caring about what doesn't matter, that's the day life becomes lighter, calmer. Reflection. Clearer. You start breathing again. You start walking with purpose again. You start feeling peace again. When you stop caring about the noise around you, you finally hear the truth inside you. Reflection. Let me tell you why life gets easier when you reach that point. When you stop caring about what people think, you take your power back. Reflection. You stop letting strangers drive your emotions like they own them. The truth is, no matter how good you are, someone will always have something to say. Reflection. You could climb mountains and they'd complain about your shoes. You could give them your best and they'd still ask for more. But when you stop caring about their opinions, reflection, you set yourself free. You learn that silence doesn't mean defeat. It means maturity. You realize that peace isn't found in their approval. It's found in your acceptance of who you are. Reflection. And that peace, once you have it, no one can take it from you. When you stop caring about what people think, you begin to reclaim your power. The power that you've been giving away. Reflection. Little by little, every single time you change yourself to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. All your life, you've been taught to seek approval from parents, teachers, reflection, friends, society. And somewhere along the way, you started to believe that your worth depended on how others saw you. You began living like a mirror. Reflection. Reflecting everyone else's expectations, but forgetting your own reflection. Every glance, every opinion, every whisper. It started controlling your mood, your confidence, even your dreams. Reflection. But here's the truth. People's opinions are as temporary as their attention spans. One moment they praise you, the next they criticize you. One day they cheer, the next day they disappear. Reflection. And if you let those shifting opinions define your peace, you will never know real peace at all. The moment you stop caring about what people think, something magical happens. Silence. Reflection. Not the silence of loneliness, but the silence of freedom. It's the kind of silence where your mind stops racing, where your heart stops doubting, where your spirit can finally breathe. Reflection. You begin to understand that you don't owe anyone an explanation for living your truth. You stop apologizing for existing as you are. You stop performing just to fit in. Reflection. You start realizing that people's opinions are projections of their own fears, their own insecurities, their own limitations, not a reflection of your potential. Reflection. They might judge you for being different, but that's only because they're afraid to be themselves. When you stop caring, you become untouchable. Reflection. The same words that once broke you now roll off your shoulders like rain. You learn that not everyone will understand your journey, and that's perfectly fine. They don't need to. Reflection. Because it's not their journey to understand. You start walking with quiet confidence, not because you think you're better, but because you finally know you're enough. Reflection. And that knowing, inner certainty, becomes your shield. You don't seek validation from applause anymore. You find validation in peace. Reflection. You don't need to be seen by the crowd because you've been seen by yourself. That's real freedom. When you no longer bend for acceptance, when you no longer shrink for approval. Reflection. When you no longer lose sleep over someone else's misunderstanding. And the beauty of it all is that once you stop caring about what people think, the right people start noticing you. Reflection. Because confidence, real confidence, doesn't scream. It speaks quietly, but powerfully. The energy of someone who is comfortable in their own skin draws others in. Reflection. You start attracting people who see your soul, not your status. You start connecting with those who love you for your truth, not your performance. The weight of pretense falls off your shoulders. Reflection. And suddenly life feels lighter. You begin to walk differently, talk differently. Reflection. And think differently because you're no longer living under the pressure of perception. You're living under the power of purpose. That's when you start to feel alive again. Reflection. You realize that peace isn't found in the silence of others' approval, but in the stillness of your own acceptance. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Reflection. You just need to be yourself completely. Life gets easier when you stop fighting for the acceptance of the world and start fighting for the peace of your soul. Reflection, because once you stop caring about what others think of you, you become unstoppable, not because the world has changed, but because you have. When you stop caring about impressing others, reflection, your focus shifts to something far greater. Improving yourself. Most people spend their lives putting on a show, trying to make the world believe they're happy, successful, and fulfilled. Reflection. While deep down they're exhausted from keeping up the performance. They wear smiles like masks, chase trends to stay relevant, and make choices not from their hearts, reflection, but from fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. But when you stop caring about impressing others, you finally drop the mask. You stop performing and start living, reflection. You stop chasing image and start chasing growth. You stop worrying about how things look and start focusing on how things feel. Reflection. That shift from outside approval to inner progress changes everything. The energy that once went into trying to look perfect begins to go into becoming better. Reflection. You stop decorating your life for display and start building it for meaning. You stop trying to be the loudest in the room and start being the most consistent. Reflection. When you stop caring about being impressive, you begin to care about being intentional. Every choice becomes about your growth, not your image. You stop asking, reflection, will this make them like me? And start asking, will this make me proud of me? That's the beginning of transformation. Reflection, because you realize that your life isn't a performance, it's a process. And in that process, progress is more powerful than perception. Reflection, when you no longer need to prove your worth to others, you start proving it to yourself. You begin to take ownership of your journey. You study more, you work harder. Reflection, you become more disciplined, not because you want applause, but because you want mastery. You start finding joy in the unseen effort, the quiet growth, the small wins that nobody claps for. Reflection, you begin to understand that the real satisfaction doesn't come from being admired. It comes from knowing you're improving every single day. You may not be where you want to be yet, reflection, but you know you're further than you were yesterday, and that alone becomes your motivation. The moment you stop trying to impress, you begin to feel lighter. Reflection, because living for image is heavy, it chains you to the opinions of others, and no matter how good you become, it's never enough. There will always be someone doing more. Reflection, someone appearing happier, someone shining brighter on the surface. But once you stop caring about that illusion, you realize most of it is fake anyway. People show their highlights, reflection, not their hardships. They project confidence, not peace. And while everyone else is busy trying to outshine each other, you're busy outgrowing yourself. Reflection, that's where the real power is, not in showing off your success, but in quietly building it. And slowly, everything begins to align. You start working not to be seen, but to be fulfilled. For reflection, you start realizing that the competition was never with anyone else. It was always with the person you were yesterday. You start chasing progress instead of perfection. Reflection, you learn that self-respect lasts longer than applause. You don't need validation when you have vision. You don't need attention when you have direction. Reflection, the satisfaction of self-improvement outweighs the thrill of public approval. Because growth, unlike fame, never fades. It builds you, it strengthens you, reflection, and it keeps you grounded even when life shakes you. So when you stop caring about impressing others, you begin to live from your purpose instead of your performance. Reflection, you start giving your best not to prove a point, but to fulfill your potential. You learn to move in silence, to let your results speak louder than your explanations. Reflection, you understand that greatness doesn't need an audience, it just needs effort. And once that mindset takes root, your whole life becomes lighter, clearer, and more powerful. Reflection, you stop existing for attention and start living for alignment. And that's when life finally begins to feel like yours. When you stop caring about competing with others, reflection, you finally start focusing on growing yourself. The world we live in constantly pushes comparison. Every scroll, every conversation, every moment seems to remind you of who's doing better. Reflection, who's ahead, who's getting more recognition. You see people posting their victories, their highlights, their so-called perfect lives. And before you know it, reflection, you start measuring your journey with their ruler. You start doubting your pace, questioning your worth, and feeling like you're behind in a race that was never even yours to begin with. Reflection, but the truth is, the day you stop caring about competing with others is the day you begin to find real peace. Because growth doesn't happen when you look sideways. Reflection, it happens when you look inward. Competition can motivate you for a moment, but it will drain you in the long run if your purpose is just to prove a point. Reflection, the problem with competing is that it traps you in a cycle of constant comparison, and comparison kills gratitude. It steals your joy, your focus, your creativity. Reflection, you start living reactively instead of intentionally, trying to match someone else's timeline, someone else's version of success. But when you stop caring about competition, reflection, you realize that your journey is unique, your timing is divine, and your progress has its own rhythm. You understand that what's meant for you will never be taken by someone else. Reflection, because your blessings have your name on them. You stop rushing, you stop resenting, and you start respecting your own process. Reflection, growth happens when you invest all that wasted energy from comparison into improvement. Instead of watching someone else's success, you study your own patterns. Instead of envying their results, you refine your habits. Reflection. You start asking yourself the right questions. What can I do better today than I did yesterday? What lesson can I take from this challenge? How can I move closer to the best version of me? That's when the shift happens. Reflection. You stop running a race against others and start running a marathon with yourself. Every day becomes an opportunity to grow, not to compete. Reflection. And the beauty of that mindset is that progress begins to feel peaceful instead of pressured. You no longer feel behind because you're not following anyone's clock, but your own. Reflection. When you stop caring about competition, you also stop letting jealousy live rent free in your heart. Reflection. You start celebrating other people's success because you know it doesn't take away from yours. Reflection. You realize that someone else's win is not your loss. It's just proof that success is possible. Instead of letting envy eat your energy, you use inspiration to fuel your journey. Reflection. You start rooting for people instead of resenting them because you know your turn is coming. And that change, that shift from envy to encouragement, frees you. Reflection. It allows you to live with more gratitude, more focus, and more peace. The moment you stop comparing, you begin to see how far you've already come. Reflection. You recognize that your struggles have made you stronger, your failures have made you wiser, and your slow steps have built your stability. Reflection. You stop seeing yourself as behind and start seeing yourself as becoming, because growth isn't about beating others. It's about being better than who you were yesterday. Reflection. And when that becomes your mindset, you no longer need competition to drive you. You're driven by purpose. You're driven by vision. Reflection. You're driven by the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you're evolving, even if no one else sees it yet. Reflection. You begin to live lighter because you're no longer carrying the burden of comparison. You don't waste time trying to fit into someone else's lane when you're meant to create your own. Reflection. You don't feel threatened by someone's success because you're too busy building your own. You stop trying to outshine people and start trying to outgrow yourself. Reflection. And the funny thing is, when you stop caring about competing, you often end up achieving more because your energy isn't scattered by jealousy or distraction. It's focused on progress, reflection, discipline, and purpose. That's when you rise naturally, not because as you forced it, but because you earned it through consistent growth. So when you stop caring about who's ahead or behind, reflection, you finally start to feel free. You walk at your own pace, build in your own time, and rise in your own way. You stop living for comparison and start living for contribution. Reflection. And that's the moment your growth becomes limitless, not because you're competing, but because you're becoming everything you were meant to be. When you stop caring about being liked, reflection, you begin to build real confidence, not the kind that depends on praise or popularity, but the kind that stands strong even when the world turns its back on you. All your life, reflection, you've been taught that being liked is the goal, to be agreeable, to fit in, to make everyone comfortable, even if it means losing yourself in the process. Reflection, you shrink your voice to avoid confrontation, you hide your truth to stay accepted, and you shape yourself into what others want to see just to feel a little more loved. Reflection. But what nobody tells you is that living for approval is a slow kind of suffocation, because no matter how hard you try, someone will always find a reason not to like you. Reflection. And once you understand that, you start realizing how meaningless it is to keep chasing everyone's validation. The moment you stop caring about being liked, you start walking differently. Reflection. You stop apologizing for being real. You stop dimming your light because it makes others uncomfortable. You stop explaining your dreams to people who can't see your vision. Reflection. You begin to feel a quiet power rise within you, a strength that doesn't need attention, a confidence that doesn't need clapping. Reflection. It's the kind of confidence that's come from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're not willing to compromise. Reflection. You realize that you don't need to fit in with people who don't align with your truth. You understand that your value isn't measured by how many people like you, reflection, but by how deeply you respect yourself. When you stop caring about being liked, you start focusing on being respected, reflection. And respect doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from standing for something. It comes from keeping your word, showing up with integrity, reflection, and being consistent with your principles even when it's inconvenient. People might not always agree with you, but they'll respect you for being real. They'll know that what you say, reflection, you mean, and what you do, you stand by. That's a rare kind of strength in a world where most people are afraid to offend. And that strength becomes your armor. Reflection. You stop bending just to stay accepted because you finally understand that losing yourself to be liked is too high a price to pay. The truth is, reflection, The need to be liked makes you a prisoner to other people's moods. One moment you feel worthy because someone praised you. The next moment you doubt yourself because someone criticized you. Reflection, you become addicted to approval like it's oxygen, forgetting that you already have your own breath. But when you stop caring about being liked, you take back your emotional balance. Flexion, you no longer rise and fall with people's opinions. Their praise doesn't inflate you, and their judgment doesn't break you. You become stable, grounded in who you are. Flexion, anchored in your own truth. You begin to see that peace doesn't come from being liked by others. It comes from liking yourself. As you grow into this mindset, reflection, you start noticing something powerful. The right people begin to appear. The ones who connect with your authenticity, not your image. The ones who value your honesty, not your performance. Reflection, because when you stop pretending, you attract people who appreciate the real you, flaws, quirks, and all. You no longer have to exhaust yourself trying to please everyone. Reflection, because the ones who truly belong in your life don't need to be convinced to stay. They stay because they see you, they understand you, and they respect you. Reflection, that's when relationships become lighter, deeper, and more genuine. And through all of this, you start feeling a sense of liberation that no amount of approval could ever give. Reflection, you wake up each day no longer wondering, do they like me? But instead asking, do I like the person I'm becoming? That's the question that truly matters. Flexion, you start dressing for yourself, speaking for yourself, and living for yourself. You begin to love your own company. Reflection, and that's where confidence is born, not from being the most admired in the room, but from being the most authentic. You stop needing validation because you've already validated yourself. Reflection, and once you reach that point, no rejection can shake you, no gossip can define you, and no judgment can limit you because you finally know who you are. And that truth, reflection, once you embrace it fully, makes you unstoppable. When you stop caring about the noise around you, you start protecting your energy, and that's when life truly begins to feel lighter. You see, reflection, every single day, your mind and heart are pulled in 100 different directions by people's opinions, by unnecessary drama, by negativity, by distractions that drain you little by little. Flexion, you give your attention to things that don't serve you. You spend your emotions on people who don't value you. Reflection, you exhaust your spirit trying to fix what was never your responsibility in the first place. Reflection, but when you stop caring about the noise, when you decide that not everything deserves a reaction, not everyone deserves a response, you begin to reclaim your power. Reflection, protecting your energy doesn't mean you stop caring about life. It means you stop wasting yourself on things that don't matter. There's a certain peace that comes from silence, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of wisdom. You learn that not every argument needs your presence. Reflection, not every insult needs your defense. Not every situation deserves your involvement. You begin to understand that peace is expensive and you can't afford to spend it recklessly. Reflection, you start choosing where to place your emotion like someone guarding their treasure, because that's what your energy truly is, your treasure. Flexion, when you stop caring about the chaos others bring, you stop being dragged into storms that were never yours to fight. You start walking away from gossip, negativity, reflection, and drama because you finally realize that your time and energy are sacred. And the moment you honor that truth, you stop feeling drained and start feeling directed. Flexion, protecting your energy also means learning the power of no. You stop saying yes just to keep others comfortable. Flexion, you stop overextending yourself to please people who wouldn't do the same for you. You stop feeling guilty for putting yourself first. Reflection, because protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. You can't pour into others if you're constantly running on empty. Reflection, you can't be your best self if you're always dealing with emotional chaos. The world will always demand more of you, more attention, more time. Reflection, more effort, but you must decide what's worth giving and what's worth letting go. When you stop caring about being available to everyone, you start becoming available to yourself. Reflection, and that's where true growth begins. In solitude, in stillness, in self-care. As you protect your energy, you start noticing how much lighter life feels. Reflection, the same situations that once drained you no longer disturb your peace. You begin to master the art of detachment, not coldness, not indifference, but control. Flexion, you learn to be calm even in chaos, to smile even when others provoke, to walk away even when pride wants to argue. That level of composure doesn't come from weakness, it comes from strength. Reflection. It's knowing that peace is more valuable than being right, that calmness is more powerful than control. You start realizing that you can't heal in the same environment that hurts you. Reflection. So you quietly distance yourself from what disrupts your energy. You no longer chase closure from people who enjoy your confusion. You no longer argue with those committed to misunderstanding you. Reflection. You protect your peace like it's your purpose, because it is. And as your energy becomes guarded, your clarity deepens. You can hear your own thoughts again. Reflection. You can feel your own emotions again. You stop moving out of reaction and start moving with intention. You become more selective with people, with places, with priorities. Reflection. You start surrounding yourself with peace instead of pressure, with calm instead of competition. You begin to realize that peace is not something you find, it's something you build. Reflection. Day by day, by choosing where your energy flows, you stop letting negativity rent space in your mind. You stop giving temporary people permanent access to your spirit. Reflection. You understand that not everything that demands your attention deserves it. And that's when your energy begins to heal you. You start waking up lighter, thinking clearer. Reflection. And breathing easier, because you've created a space within yourself that the world can't touch. Protecting your energy becomes your way of honoring your worth. Reflection. You finally understand that your peace is your power. And when you stop caring about the things that disturb it, life starts moving smoother, quieter, and with more meaning. Reflection. You realize that you don't have to fight every battle. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is protect your peace and let silence speak for you. Reflection. When you stop caring about what others expect you to be, you begin to live authentically. And that right there is the purest form of freedom. For most of your life, reflection, you've been shaped by the voices of others telling you how to act, how to talk, how to dream, and how to live. You've been conditioned to follow the crowd, to blend in. Reflection, to meet standards that were never yours to begin with. You wear masks because you fear judgment. You play roles because you crave belonging. And somewhere along the way, reflection, you forget what your own voice sounds like. You lose touch with who you really are because you've been too busy being what the world wanted you to be. Reflection. But when you stop caring about all that, when you finally drop the mask, silence the noise, and choose truth over approval, something inside you comes alive again. Reflection. That's when authenticity takes over. Living authentically doesn't mean you become perfect. It means you become honest. You stop pretending that everything's fine when it's not. Reflection. You stop forcing smiles when your soul feels heavy. You stop chasing the illusion of perfection and start embracing the beauty of being real. Authenticity is messy. It's raw. Reflection. It's vulnerable, but it's real. And that's what makes it powerful. Because when you live authentically, you're no longer at war with yourself. Reflection. You don't wake up every morning fighting to maintain an image. You don't spend your energy rehearsing how to act or speak just to please people. You start showing up as you are, imperfect. Reflection, genuine, unfiltered. And in that space of honesty, peace finds you. The moment you stop caring about being understood by everyone, you begin to understand yourself. Reflection. You realize that not everyone will get your journey, and that's okay. They weren't meant to. You stop explaining your dreams to people who think too small to see them. Reflection. You stop seeking permission to be yourself, because your existence alone is proof that you're worthy. You start making decisions that align with your values, not with society's expectations. Reflection. You wear what feels right. You speak your truth, even when your voice shakes, and you walk away from anything that forces you to betray your spirit. You start trusting your own intuition, reflection, and that trust becomes your compass. Authenticity also brings clarity. When you live in truth, reflection, you begin to see who's truly there for you and who's only there for the version of you that benefits them. Some people will distance themselves when you stop pretending, reflection, because your authenticity exposes their superficiality. And that's fine. Let them go. The ones who are meant to stay will celebrate the real you. They'll appreciate your honesty, reflection, your flaws, your fire. They'll love your presence, not your performance. And that's when your circle becomes smaller but stronger, quieter but realer. Reflection. Authentic living filters out the fake and draws in the genuine. You stop needing a crowd because you found connection. Reflection. Living authentically also means embracing your story, every part of it. The mistakes, the heartbreaks, the lessons, the comebacks. Reflection. You stop hiding your scars out of shame and start wearing them as symbols of strength. You realize that your past doesn't disqualify you, it refines you. Reflection. You no longer measure your worth by who you used to be, but by how far you've come. You start telling your truth boldly. Reflection, because you've learned that your vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. When you're authentic, your life stops being about appearances and starts being about purpose. Flexion, you stop existing to impress and you start existing to inspire. And as you live this way, flexion, you begin to notice a peace that feels different. It's not the peace of being untouched by the world, but the peace of being true in it. You no longer feel the pressure to compare, reflection, to compete, or to conform. You stop running from yourself and start returning to yourself. The weight of pretending lifts off your shoulders, reflection, and you feel lighter because you're no longer split between who you are and who you pretend to be. You walk into every room as yourself, reflection, and that authenticity radiates a kind of quiet confidence that can't be faked. People feel it. Life feels it. The universe feels it. Because when you live in truth, reflection, everything around you begins to align with it. That's when you realize authenticity isn't just a choice, it's liberation. It's the freedom to be unapologetically you, flexion, without shrinking, without pretending, without waiting for the world to approve. You stop needing to be liked and you start loving who you are. Reflection, you start saying yes to the things that nurture your soul and no to the things that drain your spirit. You stop existing in fragments and start living in wholeness. And in that wholeness, flexion, life doesn't just get easier. It gets real, it gets peaceful, and it gets profoundly yours. When you stop caring about who walks away from your life, reflection, you finally begin to see who's meant to stay. You start to understand that not everyone you meet is supposed to journey with you until the end. Some people are lessons, not lifetimes, reflection. Some are chapters, not the whole story. And yet we cling, we hold on so tightly to relationships, friendships, and connections that have already expired, hoping that if we care enough, reflection, if we try hard enough, things will go back to how they used to be. But the truth is people change, seasons shift, and paths diverge. When you stop caring about forcing people to stay, reflection, you free yourself from the chains of emotional exhaustion. You stop begging for loyalty from those who were never truly committed. You stop trying to resurrect what was meant to end, reflection. And in that release, you find peace. There is a strange kind of strength that comes when you finally stop chasing people. Reflection, you realize that losing someone who doesn't value your presence is not a loss. It's a blessing. You start to see that sometimes rejection is protection. Reflection and closure doesn't always come from conversation. It comes from acceptance. You stop rereading old messages, stop replaying old memories, stop trying to figure out where it went wrong. Instead, reflection, you focus on what's right, your growth, your healing, your journey forward. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come because you no longer need it to move on. Reflection, the moment you stop caring about who left, you start making space for who's coming. And something beautiful happens when you make that space. Real people begin to enter your life. Reflection. People who see you for who you are, not for what you can do for them. People who love you without conditions, without expectations, without manipulation. Reflection. You start attracting souls that match your energy, not just your history. You realize that genuine connections don't require you to shrink, to perform, or to earn affection. Reflection. They flow effortlessly, they grow naturally, and they bring peace instead of pressure. But you can't receive those kinds of relationships if you're still clinging to those that drain you. Reflection. Sometimes the universe removes people not to punish you, but to protect you from staying small. When you stop caring about who walks away, your self-worth starts to rise. Reflection. Because every time you let go of someone who doesn't treat you right, you remind yourself that you deserve better. Reflection. You stop confusing attachment with love and start seeing that love without respect is just dependency. You stop tolerating half effort, one-sided loyalty, and emotional inconsistency. Reflection. You stop explaining yourself to people who only listen to reply. You stop chasing closure from people who never cared enough to give you clarity. Reflection. You understand that your peace is more important than their presence. You realize that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength wrapped in self-respect. Reflection. There's also freedom in not caring who stays or goes because it teaches you to stand on your own. You start building a relationship with yourself that no one can break. Reflection. You learn to enjoy your own company, to be your own comfort, to become your own home. Loneliness turns into solitude, and solitude turns into power. Reflection. You stop feeling empty when people leave because you filled yourself with purpose. You understand the ones meant for you will never have to be chased. They'll choose to stay. Reflection. They'll choose to show up. They'll choose to grow with you. And the ones who don't, let them go in peace because holding on to the wrong people only delays the right ones. In time, reflection, you begin to see that people leaving isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something better. Every departure teaches you more about yourself. You learn what you value, reflection, what you'll tolerate, and what you deserve. You become more selective, more peaceful. and more grounded. You start seeing that endings aren't always tragedies, reflection. Sometimes they're transformations. And as you grow, you realize that the right people don't have to be forced to stay. They stay because they see your worth, reflection. They stay because they align with your energy. They stay because they're meant to. So when you stop caring about who walks away, you stop living in fear of loss, reflection. You start living in faith, faith that what's yours won't leave, and what leaves was never truly yours. You stop chasing what's temporary and start cherishing what's true, reflection. You understand that the people who are meant to walk beside you will meet you at your frequency, not your begging. You learn to close doors quietly, without resentment, reflection, without bitterness, just gratitude for the lesson and strength for the next chapter. And in that peace, in that beautiful act of letting go, reflection, you find something far more powerful than approval or affection. You find freedom. When you stop caring about controlling everything, life begins to flow instead of fight you. Reflection. Most of our stress, our frustration, and our pain come from this desperate need to make everything go exactly as we imagine. We want every plan to work, every person to behave the way we hope, every outcome to meet our expectations. We want life to unfold according to our script, and when it doesn't, when things fall apart, when people disappoint us, reflection, when doors close, we crumble inside because we feel like we've lost control. But the truth is, control is an illusion. The more you try to grip life tightly, reflection, the more it slips through your fingers. The moment you stop caring about controlling every detail, you discover the beauty of surrender. And that's where real peace begins. Reflection. When you stop caring about forcing things to happen, you start to recognize that not everything is meant to happen right now, and not everything is meant to happen your way. Reflection. You begin to trust timing instead of fighting it. You realize that sometimes delays aren't denials and rejections are redirections. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, reflection, maybe this is preparing me. You understand that life isn't punishing you. It's positioning you. You stop resisting what's not working and start aligning with what is, reflection. That shift in mindset changes everything. Because the truth is, the tighter you hold on, the more you block what's naturally meant to flow into your life. But the moment you release that grip, reflection, life begins to open up. Opportunities come, people appear, and clarity unfolds. Control often comes from fear. The fear of uncertainty, the fear of failure, the fear of being hurt. Reflection, we think if we can control every outcome, we can protect ourselves from pain. But what we really do is imprison ourselves in anxiety. We wake up worrying about what might go wrong. Reflection, replaying every scenario in our head, trying to predict every move. That's not living, that's surviving. When you stop caring about controlling everything, you step into faith, reflection. You start to believe that even if you can't see the path, it's still being guided. You start trusting that what's meant for you won't miss you, and what misses you was never meant for you. Reflection. You stop fighting storms and start learning how to stand calmly in the rain. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to the flow of life. Reflection. It means you stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start focusing on your response. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control your peace. You can't control what happens, reflection, but you can control how you choose to grow through it. When you release control, you give yourself permission to breathe, to feel, to be human. You allow life to surprise you, to teach you, reflection, to shape you. Sometimes the best things in your life come when you least expect them. And if you're too busy trying to control the process, you'll miss the blessing in the chaos. Reflection. And when you stop caring about control, you begin to appreciate uncertainty. You start to see that life's unpredictability is what makes it beautiful. If you knew every outcome, reflection, there'd be no wonder, no excitement, no growth. It's the unknown that builds faith. It's the uncertainty that builds strength. Reflection. You start to trust the process even when it doesn't make sense. You stop trying to rush the lessons and start learning from them. You begin to believe that maybe, just maybe, reflection, everything is unfolding exactly as it should, even if you don't understand it right now. You learn patience, you learn humility, and you learn peace. Reflection. There's a special kind of calm that enters your life when you stop trying to control everything and start trusting yourself. You begin to believe that no matter what happens, you'll handle it. Reflection. You don't need to know every answer to take the next step. You just need faith to move forward. You stop overthinking the past and overplanning the future. You start living in the present, reflection, appreciating what is instead of stressing over what could be. You find joy in simplicity, strength in stillness, and clarity in acceptance. You start moving with life instead of against it, reflection. And when you finally let go, you realize that control was never the source of your power. Surrender was. Because when you release the need to control everything around you, reflection, you take control of the only thing that ever truly mattered, your peace. You stop letting circumstances dictate your emotions and you begin to rise above them. Reflection, you stop being a victim of outcomes and become a master of your mindset. You no longer fear uncertainty because you've learned to trust yourself and the timing of your life. Reflection, and in that surrendering go, in that quiet form, you find the kind of peace that control could never give you. So in the end, when you stop caring about the noise, the opinions, flexion, the pressure, and the need to control every piece of the puzzle, life becomes lighter. Not because everything gets easier, but because you do. You become stronger. You become calmer. Flexion. You stop chasing and you start attracting. You stop forcing and you start flowing. Flexion. You begin to understand that peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from an unshakable heart. You find strength in silence, confidence in stillness, and power in patience. Flexion. Life will always have storms. People will change, plans will fail, doors will close. But when you stop caring about what doesn't matter, you'll have the clarity to see what does. Reflection. You'll have the courage to walk away from chaos and the wisdom to protect your peace. You'll learn that not everything deserves your energy. Not everyone deserves your access. Flexion. And not every battle deserves your response. And that's when life truly opens up. Not when you get everything you want, but when you finally stop needing to. Reflection. When you stop caring about being everything for everyone and start being true to yourself, that's when the world begins to bend in your favor. That's when peace replaces pressure, flexion, purpose replaces fear, and strength replaces stress. So let go, breathe deep, walk with faith, not fear. Reflection, because the moment you stop caring about what doesn't serve your soul, that's the moment life starts caring for you.